Alright, good morning everybody. Today we're going to do meatloaf. I'm gonna show you how I do my meatloaf. Let me get my ketchup real quick because I forgot that. So you can do this a bunch of different ways. My family, I went low carb a while ago, and I was trying to find ways of doing my best, not strict, low carb or anything, but doing my best to reduce the carb count in our foods and stuff, the regular things that we already eat, or finding substitutions for the things that we already eat. That way it would not be such a shock to my family or anything like that, or I would be able to eat with them, wouldn't have to make a separate meal for me. Since then, though, they've now got so used to, for example, the meatloaf being, instead of using breadcrumbs, I use oatmeal. They've gotten so used to that they don't really want it any other way, or they find it odd when I change. So, I'm going to show you how I do it with dried oats, but you can use breadcrumbs in the place of that. So don't think that this is just like, this is one of those low carb recipes. No. We can do it low carb, but you don't have to. You can substitute for breadcrumbs. So just remember that. And so I'm just going to go ahead and get started and show you everything, and then I'll dig in with my hands here in a second. So this is about 2.5 pounds to 3 pounds of ground beef. It's full fat, but you don't have to use full fat. Well, no, it's not full fat. It's ground chuck, so it's not completely full fat, but close, but not completely. It's not lean. You do need a little bit of that fat to give it flavor. You could use lean if you're, okay with that, but I like a little bit of flavor in there. The first thing I like to do is go ahead and put my spices in first, mix them in first, then put my egg, and all my wet stuff, then put the oats. So I mix it each time as I go, because I don't want the wet to combine with the dry, like the spices, and have big clumps of spices. I want it spread throughout. So, meatloaf is easy to make, but it does have a little bit of an art to it, I guess you could say, where it needs to try to go a certain way, or it's just going to taste terrible. Okay, so we're going to go ahead with our spices. I'm going to be using onion powder in place of onion. You can do chopped onion. My family doesn't like the chunks of onion. They don't like that. Even if I saute it, they still don't like it. They got a texture thing. They get that from their dad. Anyway, so what I typically do is things like that where they're very particular, I will put onion powder in the place of, and it is just as good. Just be careful with your onion powder, because some onion powders, the way they're made up, they actually have excess sodium in them, and I'm not talking about onion salt. Let me say that. A lot of people say, well, that's onion salt. No, it's onion powder as well, because I've made a lot of mistakes with other things by putting onion powder in and salt in there, and then they taste salty, and I'm like, what? It shouldn't. And the only thing I think of is my onion powder makes it just a little bit salty. So I will add a little bit of salt, but it won't be much, because some of it comes from my onion powder. So I'm going to eyeball these, and I will try to put a recipe down below that I kind of loosely base this on, and you can follow that recipe instead. I also want to say that you can use other meats. You do not have to use ground beef. You can use ground turkey, you can use venison, you can use any of that stuff. And most people that's been cooking for a while know that they can substitute whatever. It's still not going to matter. Okay? So the only thing that'll be different is maybe the taste may be a little bit different. Okay, so let's start with the onion powder. I would say at least 2 teaspoons, maybe 3, because I do want them to really be able to taste the onion powder. I put paprika in as well, and parsley, and I'm just going to do a little bit of salt, like I said. I mean, literally, maybe a half a teaspoon. And some pepper. And typically I would have put my kosher salt in here because y'all know I love my kosher salt. But the granules are really, really large. And I'm afraid that it may mess with the salt ratio. Plus, it may also not dissolve fully. It probably would, but I just don't want to take the chance. So, you don't have to mix this well, but kind of stir. And you can do it with your hands too, it doesn't matter. Stir the spices around in there a little bit so they're not all clumped together. That way when we add the wet, it'll be okay. Alright, now, I not only put ketchup on the outside of, or on the top of my meatloaf, I also do it on the inside. So, let me go ahead and add the ketchup. I don't even know how much that is, so hopefully that recipe will help you. It's probably about a half a cup of ketchup. Okay, so, and in between, it's just good to give it a good stir. And yes, I'm going to be digging in with my hands in a minute because it's just not going to do it fully. Okay. Get ready because we're going to switch pans here in a minute. And I do always, like for our family, we got 5 family members that I'm cooking for, but I have 3 boys, 3 growing boys, and you know, this sometimes will go into 2 loaf pans. And no, you don't have to have a loaf pan to have a meatloaf. I used to cook it all the time on a cookie sheet. So you do whatever it is, and you can still have meatloaf. And you can put it in patties for, you know, what it's worth. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 eggs. Now this is usually where I start digging in with my hands. And then here in a second, I'm going to get my son to add the oatmeal, so I don't have to clean my hands off. I'm trying to mix it all together. Alright, so you just need enough of the breadcrumbs or oatmeal, whatever you're using, to take up the excess. Your eggs are your binder, so that's what's going to make it loafy, where you can slice it. It's going to hold it together for you. And it may not always be perfect, but it should do the job. And I feel that the dry stuff actually helps as well. So we already added some of the oatmeal. And I already know that it's not going to be enough. And I know you're sitting there thinking, it's going to look weird, it's going to taste weird, but really it absorbs in there. You don't even know it's there. Unless there's a little bit on the outside that didn't cook all the way or didn't get mixed in all the way. And then that'll be it. And the more you make this, the more you'll be able to tell. And you'll be able to eyeball it just like I do. So you're just trying to get everything mixed together. And it's just messy. I hate having to do this. But I'm sure you could wear gloves. And that would work too. Okay. So I'm going to see if this is going to fit in my loaf pan. I always use a glass loaf pan. I just like it better. It's easier to clean. So let's see. Another little trick, if you're going to use a loaf pan, go ahead and put it on a baking sheet or a cookie sheet when you put it in the oven. That way, if it does boil over, it's fine. It's not going to make your oven all dirty. Okay, so this is ready to go in the oven. I usually do about 350 until it's done. And it takes anywhere from 45 minutes to about an hour to get it done. But what I do when I go to check to see if it's done is cut through the center. Don't cut on the ends. And just to see if it's done all the way through. Alright, I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so it's all done. Taking it out. Last 2 minutes of cooking. You want to put your ketchup on it or tomato sauce or gravy or whatever it is that you would like on top. That's it.